Hey, good afternoon. I'm Dennis Galucki. Welcome to the 556th Imagine Greater Buffalo program and our 178th Imagine program, hosted by our wonderful downtown Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. Thanks for joining us. This program is created by the Center for the Study of Art, Architecture, History, and Nature, or C-SAAHN, as I like to pronounce the acronym, and ImagineLifelongLearning.com. Now, before we get started, just a little housekeeping. Everyone watching will be muted and your video turned off. If you have a question or a comment, please type it in to the chat box and we'll go through them at the end of the presentation as time allows. Now, we are recording this program so you can watch it again later on the Downtown Central Library's Facebook page and YouTube channels. And please, we hope you share the link with others. Now, on to our very featured speakers. Joining us today are Barbara Irwin, Dr. Barbara Irwin, and Tony Buttino, Sr., both co-authors of the newly released book, Creating Reading Rainbow, the Untold Story of a Beloved Children's Series. Barbara Irwin is Professor Emerita of the Department of Communication at Canisius University. During her more than 30 years at Canisius, she taught courses in media studies, mass communication, and journalism, directed the journalism program. She co-directed the strategic communication program and became department chair. Her expertise includes the making of television programming and the genres of children's media and daytime soap operas. Prior to joining the faculty at Canisius, Dr. Irwin worked at WNED PBS on Reading Rainbow. She is also co-author of the New York Times bestseller, The Young and the Restless, Most Memorable Moments, and The Young and the Restless Special Silver Anniversary Collector's Edition. Dr. Irwin served as executive producer for numerous documentary films produced by the Canisius College Video Institute, earning more than 30 national Telly Awards, among many other honors. Now, Tony Buttino is co-creator of the Emmy Award-winning reading motivation series, Reading Rainbow, made in part right here in Buffalo. He graduated from Ithaca College's School of Radio and TV and joined the WNED television station, where he rose from a volunteer camera person to studio supervisor to director, producer, and production manager. At WNED, he had a dream to create educational programming for children that could keep them engaged, to read over the summer breaks, and with the help of local consultants, including librarians at the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library, he made it happen. During his time at Reading Rainbow, Tony received many awards, including 5 Emmys as co-executive producer. In 1985, he was promoted to vice president for television at WNED. In addition to Reading Rainbow, he was executive producer of the Mark Russell shows for PBS and the TV special Things That Aren't There Anymore, Buffalo. Tony was inducted by his peers into the Buffalo Broadcasting Hall of Fame in 2014, 10 years ago. So let's give a warm welcome to both Dr. Irwin and Tony Buttino. And Barbara, you're going to start, I believe, right?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to talk about Reading Rainbow and the promise of public television. Sorry, okay, I'm up and running now. Reading Rainbow and the promise of public television. So we thought we would start at the beginning and jog your memories a little bit. So
Butterfly in the sky. I can go twice as high. Take a look. It's in a book. A reading rainbow. I can go anywhere. To know and ways to grow. A reading rainbow. I can anything. Take a look. It's in a book. A reading rainbow. Rainbow. Reading rainbow. Reading rainbow.
So, hopefully that song is familiar. It's the iconic show opening and theme song for the children's reading motivation series, Reading Rainbow. And we thought we would start with a quote from E.B. White regarding the promise of public television. And public television stations took up the charge of serving their communities, identifying needs in the community and determining ways to address those needs. And E.B. White was talking about ways in which non-commercial television could be something very special and arouse our dreams and take us on journeys, let us participate in things that we wouldn't have an opportunity to participate in any way, in any other way, explore things, and said it should be our Lyceum, our Chautauqua, our Minsky's, and our Camelot. So we're going to start there, and we're going to talk about ways in which Reading Rainbow took up this challenge, and we'll come to a conclusion that we think it did a pretty good job. So we wrote a book called Creating Reading Rainbow, The Untold Story of a Beloved Children's Series. And Reading Rainbow, for as important a series as it was and is, kind of flew under the radar in terms of any kind of things written about it. So there was a void to be filled. And it's among the most successful children's series in history. And it ranks right up there in terms of longevity and impact with Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which has gotten a lot more recognition, let's say, in terms of things that have been written about it and knowledge about how those series came to be. Generations of children learn to love books and reading by watching the series. The series was on for 26 years. And so we know that it cut across at least two, if not three generations of children. One of the things that a lot of people don't know is that the series originated right here in Buffalo, and we're going to talk about that. And my co-author, Tony Buttino, is responsible for that. We want to make sure that the work that was being done by WNED PBS, led by Tony, is properly recognized and documented, and we've done that. And so we're preserving that history, which in parts is like an oral history, because Tony, in the first person, is telling about his experiences in developing this series. And Reading Rainbow, it truly is beloved by millions, not only millions and millions of children, but the adults in their lives as well. So we thought it was important to do something that hadn't been done before, and that was to document this history. So I'm going to let Tony start here.
Yes, I inherited a instructional television and didn't really know what it was, but I inherited a number of committees, and they say a camel is a horse developed by a committee. And I thought that was pretty funny. And I said, we had some good people. In fact, this first thing here in 1977, I had many representatives from school districts, committees, and what have you. And we had a little survey about focusing on a particular area in instructional television curriculum, reading, math, geometry, whatever. And our group decided to focus on reading. And as I was doing this, I came across what was called the summer loss phenomenon, when kids don't read during the summer months, and decided because of my instructional television, I knew I could do something to bridge the gap during the summer. This is a summer idea. And I knew that television could do something. Wasn't sure what it was, but at some point we started just looking into ideas of what we could do. And we started with a program called Studio C, which I think Barbara's going to talk about for a minute.
Mhm. Okay. Important to note that the idea behind Reading Rainbow was not to teach reading skills, but to motivate children to read.
Mhm.
And Tony had connected with a gentleman by the name of Bill Eller,
Yeah.
who said, motivate a child to read and I'll show you a better reader. And for Tony, that's when this idea of Reading Rainbow really started to click.
Mhm. Yes, Bill Eller was the, well, he was actually a president of the International Reading Association, and he was on one of my committees. And as I say, we kicked around the ideas, and he said, motivate to read, and we'll find you a better reader. We'll know a better reader. And we began with this particular program called Studio C.
So Studio C was a program out of South Carolina Educational Television. And the thing that was unique about it was that it was the first series for children that made transcripts of the shows available. And that's what Tony was interested in, was providing kids with the scripts so that they could read along with the show when it was on, or just read the scripts at a different time. So it was the kids watching the series in the summer, reading the transcripts, and going to their libraries for follow-up activities.
And the problem was we did not have many libraries involved. We did not have many schools involved. And I'm thinking, this is not going to work. I don't think we probably should do it the next summer, until I got a letter, from Linda Chrisman, Diane Chrisman, saying, this shocked me. She said, yeah, we didn't do well. Yeah, we didn't have a lot of libraries. Yeah, the program wasn't to its target, but she says, let's do it again. And that surprised me, but she did encourage us to do it again. She felt it was a start. She saw potential in it, and she promised to bring us many more libraries the following year. So indeed, we decided to go on for 4 more summers with ideas and programs that would kind of lead towards the program. And I designed a format which is about 4 elements. The first element was a good host like Mr. Rogers. And how can you compare to Mr. Rogers? I went to see him, talked to him. He gave me a lot of ideas. And in fact, we came up with LeVar Burton through some of the production people. And I believe, Barb, we have a segment to show the pilot, piece of the pilot. Is that correct?
Yes, this is from Gila Monsters Meet You at the Airport, the pilot episode for Reading Rainbow.
I guess everybody who's ever moved knows that jittery kind of liberty-jibberty feeling you get right here. The feeling that you can't wait to get started, and the feeling that you're not quite ready to leave. Well, even if you've never moved, you've probably had almost the same feeling. When moving on to a new classroom and a new teacher, said goodbye to an old friend, or even gone away on a summer vacation and left your friends behind. Well, this book, Gila Monsters Meet You at the Airport, tells the story of a little boy who used to live right here in this very building, then moved away with his parents.
By the way, that was the first time a lot of us met LeVar Burton, the production people, and I knew, and we all knew that he was going to be sincere about the program and moved on from there. One of the other segments deals with field trips, and obviously television brings youngsters, brings people to places they can't go to it and never been, and we have a segment to show you about that.
Yeah, this is from an episode called Hill of Fire.
Mm-hmm.
Aloha. Welcome to Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. And boy, have we got a show for you. I am standing near the top of Kilauea, the world's most active volcano. And as you can see behind me, she is really erupting. This is truly a rare, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be able to experience nature at her most gloriously powerful. To give you an idea of the size of this thing, I'm standing about a half a mile away from that fountain, and it's spewing molten lava roughly 1,100 feet in the air. That's twice as tall as any skyscraper you've ever seen. I personally have never seen anything like it. It's just incredible.
Incredible indeed. Just showing what television can do. Another part of the format that I wanted to bring out was children's stories, enticing youngsters to read a book, a motivation thing, but designing around good literature. And Barb, you have a segment for that, I believe.
Yes, there was a lot of care given to choosing the books for the series, poring over hundreds and hundreds of children's books to identify quality books, quality kids literature that could that the producers could build a show around. And the feature book was a starting point for the episode. And a celebrity, most often a celebrity, would read the story. There was animation to the illustrations from the books. And that was the takeoff point for the entire episode. And the field trip would relate to that feature book. So we're going to show you a little clip from an episode about bringing the rain to Kapiti Plain that was narrated by James Earl Jones.
This is the bow, so long and strong and strung with a string, a leather thong. A bow for the arrow, the pat put together with a slender stick and an eagle feather, from the eagle who happened to drop a feather that helped to change the weather. It fell near Kipat, who watched his herd as he stood on one leg like the big stork bird. Kipat, whose cows were so hungry and dry. They moved for the rain to fall from the sky, to green up the grass all brown and dead, that needed the rain from the cloud overhead. The big black cloud, all heavy with rain, that shadowed the ground on Kapiti Plain. This was the shock that pierced the cloud and loosed the rain with thunder loud. Shot the bow so long and strong and strung with a string, a leather thong, a bow for the arrow, Kipat put together with a slender stick and an eagle feather, from the eagle who happened to drop a feather that helped to change the weather.
We should also note that there was a very intentional effort to make sure that the books that were being utilized were diverse in theme, in the cultures that they represented, in topics that they addressed. And so Reading Rainbow in many ways was ahead of its time in terms of its emphasis on representation and diversity.
And book reviews was another idea I came up with. Originally, I came up with the idea of celebrities telling us about books they read. Eventually, I thought, why not have kids tell other kids about books they like? And Barb has a segment to show about that.
Yes, this is a young girl named Charlene Anderson.
Speaking of checking it out, here are some other books I think you'll enjoy, but you don't have to take my word for it.
How would you like to read a book that makes you feel sad and happy at the same time? Well, I just did. The name of the book is When I Was Young in the Mountains. Hello, my name is Charlene Anderson. This book was about a little girl who lived in the mountains with her grandparents. I liked the pictures in the book, but my favorite was when the grandfather came home from the coal mine with dust all over his face. The only part that was clean on his face was his lips, and he would use them to kiss the top of the girl's forehead. Even though this family is poor, they are still rich with love. I think you should read this book because it's sometimes good to feel happy and sad at the same time.
So there were three reviews, 3 book reviews on each episode, in addition to the feature book. And those were the first few summers. All of those children were from Buffalo and Western New York.
And success from humble beginnings, we think it was successful. Alan Pergament, in his column in Buffalo, New York, talking about the first season, said that there were 6.5 million young viewers during that particular season.
As I had mentioned at the onset, Reading Rainbow was on the air for 26 years, and it lives among the longest running children's series on PBS. And that's a testament to how important it was to viewers and to the work that it was doing to motivate children to read.
And not only that, but it was the most used television series in schools, in classrooms, of all television programs at that time, including Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street.
And I think that was the case for about 17 years, that it was the most used series in classrooms. And not to mention the success that Reading Rainbow Reading Rainbow met by their peers. The Television Academy awarded Reading Rainbow 26 Emmy Awards, and 10 of those were for Outstanding Children's Series, and a Peabody Award for an episode called The Wall, which was about the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, and which was an illustration of Reading Rainbow addressing important themes and topics and issues in our society at the time. And that was something that Reading Rainbow did throughout its run.
And of course, it helped generations of young readers cultivate a love for books. And we met a lot of those generations at some of our book signings. So as far as I can say, mission accomplished.
So going back to E.B. White's thoughts on the promise of public television, and another quote that we thought was significant, and that's from Edward R. Murrow from 1958, and a speech that he gave that's known as the Wires and Lights in a Box speech. Again, going back to the notion that public television and public broadcasters are on a mission to serve their communities. And in terms of Reading Rainbow, the need that was identified was kids don't read enough in the summer. So it was this journey that Tony and his colleagues at WNED in Buffalo, and then partners from Nebraska Educational Television and Lancet Media together embarked on developing this series that really did illuminate and inspire and helped children to cultivate a love for books, and actually children who watched the series became lifelong readers. And we hear this all the time from the people that we've talked with and that we continue to meet up with, that say Reading Rainbow really is the thing that set me on a path to loving to read books. And there's really nothing more important than that. So we are happy to answer questions, and we thank Imagine Buffalo for hosting us today.
Well, you're quite welcome. What a great summary. Well, it was like a tag team here. You both put them together nicely. You know, this is a Buffalo rooted program. What a pat on the back you both deserve, and all the people involved in obviously writing the book, but remembering the actual program. My question is, some of those kids obviously have grown up and had kids of their own, and probably approaching grandkids, if not past that already for some. But my point is, how do you envision the catalog that you've created that's here with WNED, with the holders, for educators, for families to help, and the library system itself to help perpetuate the awareness of the catalog you've created. It doesn't go out of style. It's as relevant. Those children's books are as relevant today as they were when you read them and had kids read them. And how are you thinking about that? Because there's a lot of people that could be energized, and I would argue the library system might be that vehicle to help in that process.
Yeah. Well, one thing that we want viewers to know is that if you visit readingrainbow.org, you will find Reading Rainbow stories. So the story portions of many of the Reading Rainbow episodes are available there. And all the credit to WNED PBS and their education and outreach department for putting together resources for parents and for teachers that are also available that illustrate your point, Dennis, that Reading Rainbow is in many ways timeless, and
Yes.
and all of these episodes still have relevance today.
Yeah, it's a library just like any other library. It's a video library that can go on and be used over and over, just like books. And it could be segmented, like Barb's saying, for the stories, for the content, for different parts of that. They can use it. And we feel that WNED is going to continue to allow this to happen, Dennis, in answer to your question. And we'll be there to help them.
Well, that's really the purpose in many ways of
Yeah.
putting together this half-hour program
Yeah.
to be a promotional way of pointing to something larger. Much like you did in the late 70s, you got some people together and said, what should we be doing about this summer reading labs?
Sure.
Out comes a great program. So Joy, how are we doing for questions from the audience?
We have a couple of questions. First off, I want to say that libraries are really proud to have worked with you then and to work with the station now. Obviously, our bottom line is encouraging children to read, and we have our summer reading programs all along. Reading Rainbow, I want to show something real quickly, and then I'm going to go to the questions that people asked. I was at a conference last week in St. Louis. And there were
Wow.
500 library marketers from across the country. And this is just one person's earrings. I said, I got to take your picture. People were wearing t-shirts. Reading Rainbow means a lot to a lot of people.
Wow.
And you can see that I think that woman was from like Wisconsin or something like that. And the person wearing the shirt was like, this is my favorite t-shirt. And people always approach them when they're wearing those and say, I remember Reading Rainbow. So thank you
Wow.
for talking about that legacy and keeping it going. Let me talk about a few questions that we have here. Christine is an elementary reading specialist. She appreciates what you have done. She is the one that actually asked how she could watch them now. And I know you said people should head to readingrainbow.org. We've got someone named Bob who's saying, did any of the field trips include to Buffalo area sites?
They did have one that included the Niagara Falls area. I forgot what particular program that was, Barb. I don't remember, but they did show Niagara Falls. I'm trying to think if they did a thing on the music stuff from Mr. Rogers, but yeah, it did include. By the way, all the kids, the first few years, the kid book reviews were done here in Buffalo. All the work that Pam Johnson, who our co-author, also did to bring in kids to be auditioned. That was a wild time. And so it was about 3 or 4 years of us doing all the book reviews. Charlene, for example, that she was a child from Buffalo. Tom Puckett, the WBN news anchor was other. And so a lot of that stuff was done here in the area for sure.
Tom Puckett has actually put some of that on his social media, which is
Yep.
nice because it spreads it even further. Someone named Cornelia, excuse me if I'm saying your name wrong, writes a wonderful success and so great you built in diversity from the start. How did you find illustrators to work with you?
Go ahead, Barb. I think you know about the books and how they
Well,
did.
that would go back to the production team
Yeah.
selecting the books.
Right.
So they were working with with publishers, but not working directly with the illustrators. But if they selected a
Yeah.
book, obviously, in part it was, will the illustrations
Yes.
play well on television, and can they be animated in any way to do that?
I was fortunate enough to be able to find some good executive producers for this series. In fact, this executive producer of Studio C, I hunted her down and she became the executive producer of Reading Rainbow. And thinking of publishers at the beginning, it was difficult to get the publishers to want us to air the programs, thinking if we aired them features, they would not sell. Well, obviously, it came the other way around. And by the time we were done with the 155 programs, they were knocking on our doors to see if their book could be put on television.
Yeah.
So the good question.
One of the things related to the illustrations that's kind of interesting, there was a research company called RMC Research that was part of Reading Rainbow from the very beginning to assess whether the episodes were resonating with children, and what could they learn to incorporate into future episode production. And what they found initially was that kids they oftentimes thought they were watching a cartoon or a movie, and didn't realize that it was a book. So the fact that in that clip from Gila Monsters, when LeVar Burton actually holds the book in his hands and shows it to the camera, that was incorporated as a way to make the connection for children watching that in fact they were seeing a book and not a cartoon or a movie.
Right.
Dennis, just the final messages are we wish them continued success and love the idea of children reading and getting them started at a young age.
Oh,
And one other item that you mentioned earlier, I purposely wear this Buffalo Bills jacket over my Reading Rainbow because sometimes when we're doing these blogs, people don't know it originated in Buffalo. In fact, we're trying to have a thing like Buffalo Talking Proud, Buffalo Reading Proud.
good idea. And it's that future that intrigues me as we imagine Greater Buffalo. That's the direction. I know you addressed about a month or so ago, what was it, the New York State Education? And it was an assembly, it was a Zoom call I was invited to participate in. And how what was the reaction from that? If you could just summarize it, what's your sense? Is the word out there in New York State, at least, as we say, this is homegrown here in Buffalo?
Right. Right. I think word is getting out. We did a virtual book talk with the New York State Library. And this was an experiment for them. We were, I think, the first of this kind of thing that they were testing, and they had hundreds of people tuned into it. So they deemed it a big success. And we know that educators believe in the mission of Reading Rainbow. We know that teachers believe in the mission of Reading Rainbow, and librarians believe in the mission of Reading Rainbow. And as much as we can, reach out to them and keep this idea of motivating kids to read at the forefront, that's what Reading Rainbow is all about, and that's what we're all about right now. Is keeping that momentum going.
Yeah, and I've been approached to do a library presentation in the West Seneca Public Library and a few others like that. So we'll continue doing, as we get requests, we'll continue doing it. And by the way, I believe if it weren't for Linda Christman of the library, we may not have a Reading Rainbow. So go librarians.
Yeah.
Well, what you've reminded, I hope everyone, is the power of one. The power sometimes in a negative way to say something, I don't like it, and then we stop it. But also the power to encourage. And that's seems like it was an important moment in your life. Certainly. So Tony, that's a good reminder. All right, folks, as you know, we also create a Buffalo Day at Chautauqua once a year. This coming year, it'll be July 15th, week 4. And the theme is about the American experiment, the future of the American experiment. And for Buffalo Day, we added the phrase, depends on lifelong learning. And our featured group will be the 2 folks you're looking at, Dr. Irwin and Tony. And they'll be, I think we've got them scheduled for 5 o'clock, but it will be tied with public television from WNAD, talking about the lifelong learning capability of TV and the libraries, and your experiences, obviously, with Reading Rainbow. So put a circle around that date for next year's calendar, July 15th, and everybody is free from Buffalo in the 44 zip codes, 14201 to 14280. So make note of that, and be our word spreaders, if you would, folks. You know, people that grew up maybe on Reading Rainbow, maybe they have kids today that would appreciate Reading Rainbow. So do that. And the library system. Joy, it really comes down to that. You folks in downtown Buffalo and Erie County Public Library, hats off to you. It's a way of me also saying thank you for even doing this program, because it's expanding people's awareness of the library beyond a building with books that you do so much more. And this is just an example, this series, and it hopefully gets the word out. So my thanks to you two, and we will wrap this up. Folks, thank you for joining us today. There will be no Imagine program next week. We always take that Tuesday off before Thanksgiving, so we can kind of travel around to family and celebrate with them around the country. It will return on Tuesday, December 3rd, again on Zoom, naturally, where we're going to be joined by Ray Gaskla. Now, Ray, I met, he's an interesting person. He wanted to do a pilgrimage about all the Catholic churches in Western New York, take photographs of them. So he's going to be presenting the beautiful art and architecture of these places, many of which are scheduled to be closing. So we hope you'll join us. I think it's going to be an interesting program for sure. And hopefully we'll see you then. I'm Dennis Galucki. Be well and good day and happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you, Tony.
Yep. Thank you.